What is the worst US state and why? I've lived in Mississippi my whole life. I would like to leave, but won't because of aging parents. I want my son to know his grandparents, and I don't want them to get old and die alone. There are some good things about this state, but there are definitely plenty of bad things too. We are not all small-minded and hateful. There is a ton of good art and music. There are also highly educated and intelligent people here. We have some beautiful rivers and creeks, hardwood forests that have been doggedly protected, and quirky little pockets of charm. I am a teacher, and I see every day how poverty creates ignorance and crime. I teach young people that it doesn't have to be that way. The new generation of kids don't share past generations' views on race, gender, or sexuality. Anyway, that's all to say, I guess my state is the shittiest in the country, but I want to tell people that it's not all racism and bigotry. The minority is holding their line, and though change comes at a painfully slow pace here, I get some satisfaction in seeing it happen. It's like watching fragile, green shoots push their way upwards. I could choose to be cynical about being stuck here, but I'd rather put my energy into being part of the shift. Edit. Whoa. I was not expecting so much love. Y'all are awesome. When I checked back and saw all of your replies, my heart got fat and warm, and my eyes welled up. This made my day. 2 Italian men get on a bus. They sit down and engage in an animated conversation. The lady sitting behind them ignores them at first, but her attention is galvanized when she hears one of the men say the following. Emma come first. Den I come. Den 2 asses come together. I come once a more. 2 asses, they come together again. I come again and pee twice. Then I come one last a time. You foul-mouthed swine, retorted the lady indignantly. In this country we don't talk about our sex lives in public. Hey, coola down lady, said the man. Who talkin' about a sexa? I'm a just a tellin' my frienda how to spell a Mississippi. As a 15-year trucker who's been to all 48 contiguous states, I can confidently say Mississippi. Update, I'm shut down for the night now. Was on break when I made the original comment. Understand that this is all subjective and based on personal experience as a truck driver. First off, any metro area sucks as far as most truckers are concerned. For me, there's just no endearing or redeeming quality about the state. From a trucker's perspective, most of the places we have available to park have little to no amenities, or security. There are the major franchises, but a lot of those usually only look good on the outside. Not a whole lot of places where we feel safe parking, although Louisiana is a very close second. Some of the wildly wobbly roads cause my freight to shift and slide despite me driving in a straight line. They usually don't actually fix roads, they just patch them up with asphalt repeatedly. When construction zones are finished and cleared, they'll leave the construction speed limit signs up so they can legally ticket you even though there's no more construction. They usually wait until the end of the month so they can make their quotas and everyone's guard is down. I've personally never seen this happen in another state. Customers, warehouses and the like, barely maintain their facilities since the state hardly seems to enforce anything. Although I did see one in Jersey City that looked like it should have been condemned. Even places that are supposed to look nice, like offices, look drab and wholly depressing. Unless you're in one of the few more affluent areas. There's other things, but these are some that come immediately to mind. I also say Mississippi. I lived there in the late 1990s in the Delta area. I was shocked at how racist the town was. We were there for only a few years and were looking for a house to rent. We are white. We rented in the black side of town. We loved it, but no one would rent to us in the white side of town because they did not know us and were afraid we would mingle with black people. We were going to join a golf course. After complete the application, we were asked off the cuff if we associated with, terrible word with hard R, because we could not be members if we did. We told them to keep their application and we wanted no part of their club. I worked at a staffing temporary agency. I actually had a bank that called and needed a receptionist for a few weeks while theirs was out. The manager came out and said, "Do not send me a hard R word again." I quit that job too. At the time we did not have children, but I was told there was a white school and a black school. I asked how in the world they could get away with that. I was told the white school is a private school and we keep the tuition high enough that the blacks can't afford it. I was so glad to get away from there. When I left, I wrote a very long detailed account of all that happened when we were there and sent it off to several major news agencies and begged them to do an investigative story. I did not get one reply. Edit, I really should be believed, because I have lived in a lot of the crappy ones, Ohio, Kentucky, Mississippi, Oklahoma. The better ones were North Carolinian and Georgia and Virginia. When I moved from Tennessee to Arkansas, that's exactly how I felt. I still remember the first time I drove from Little Rock, Arkansas to New Orleans, which is about a 6 to 7 hour drive. For the first hour, it's just interstate. Then that just ends, and you're driving through rural eastern Arkansas. Holy shit, it was so depressing. It was just farmland and abject poverty. Occasionally you'd pass through a town that had a cluster of houses, a gas station, and a McDonald's. It was an hour of this depressing shit. Then you cross a big bridge over the Mississippi River. There's a single giant casino there, but literally nothing else. Oh dear God. If you thought the Arkansas side was bad. On the Mississippi side, the poverty is clearly on a completely different level. Driving through a town between these desolate and dilapidated farmhouses is just a single abandoned gas station and maybe 3 trailers. That's it. No McDonald's, and not even a working gas station. Eventually you get to the edge of Jackson and hit the interstate. There's still not anything cool there, but at least there is some fast food and you can get gas if you need it. It is a functional city, not just abjectly impoverished farmland. But dear Lord, rural Mississippi poverty is on another level. Side note, there is a single working gas station that I remember during the rural MS stretch. It's not in a town. It's beside the forest where Teddy Roosevelt killed the bear that inspired the teddy bear. It has one of those standing painted wood pictures with cutouts for heads that you stand behind and put your head through for a picture. It's a cool little place. Native Mississippian here, and I don't disagree with anyone that it's the worst state. It's almost impossible to defend in any way. We're gerrymandered to shit and our elected officials are truly horrific. Our education system is systematically underfunded and so there's just a complete lack of basic knowledge and critical thinking skills in a large portion of the population. See, vaccination rates. The poverty in the Delta seems impossible in the supposedly richest country in the world. With that being said, I would just encourage people to remember that, like any other place, we're not all hillbillies who put skull on our pancakes and can't read. Case in point, one of the good things about Mississippi is its literary and arts culture. Faulkner, Richard Wright, Margaret Walker, Eudora Welty, Jessamine Ward, Keys Lehman, and many, many others. I think even more importantly, however, is how central Mississippi has been to African American history, and by writing off Mississippi we can tend to forget that. As someone mentioned above, our Civil Rights Museum in Jackson is top-notch. The Ida B. Wells Museum in Holly Springs is another great one. The first African American elected official, Hiram Revels, was elected to the Senate in Mississippi during Reconstruction. James Meredith, who enrolled at the University of Mississippi in 1961, began the desegregation of higher education in the South. And the term Black Power was first uttered in the state, a testament to its many citizens who put their lives on the line for the civil rights movement. It's an extremely complex state that I feel a very conflicted sense of loyalty about. So while I'm not necessarily advocating for anyone to visit, much less move here, If you don't know much about Mississippi history, I would encourage you to seek it out. Also, the food slaps hard. For some reason I went to Alaska for college, don't ask me why. Just looked beautiful and I had a scholarship, so I figured why not. It was actually really hard to make friends because I was the only out-of-state student, but I had this really hot chem professor named Dr. Lee. She was really young for a professor. I think she went to grad school young, and probably one of those students who were always several grades ahead. But she was one of those new age chicks who wore her hair up in a bun with horn-rim glasses and clogs to work every day. She seemed so stylish yet nerdy and intellectual at the same time. I went to every office hours and tried to make sure I was signed up to the smallest lab section I could. It paid off one day when we had lab on Saturday, due to some renovations, and nobody showed up except me. It was a small department, so we didn't have a TA, which meant Dr. Lee was teaching the lab herself. At first it was pretty normal, she just walked me through the basic titration experiment. I was nervous as hell, so my hands kept shaking, but she took it as I was worried about my grade. "Don't stress so much," she said with a laugh. She put her hand on my shoulder and I sort of jumped and felt my heart pounding. "If you make a mistake you can start over. I'm here all day anyway. In fact, I'll be in my office if you need me, since you're good enough to work on your own for a bit." She left me in the lab and it was actually pretty easy, not that I was good at chem or anything. I had just been busting my ass studying chem and ignoring everything else because I wanted to impress her. But then I realized how dumb I was being, rushing to finish sooner when she already said she'd be there all day. This was my chance, I told myself, because I was a dumb college kid. So I looked around, saw the coast was clear, and dumped it down the sink. Then I went upstairs and up to her office. Huh, her first name is Griselda, weird, I thought, looking at her nameplate. What am I doing? This will never work. I tried to push that inner voice down as I knocked on her door. "Hey, Grisel I mean Dr. Lee, I messed it up. I keep trying it and it's going way past the titration point." "Really? Well, don't worry, you're the only one that showed up. I'll give you an adjust for coming in, so you won't be nervous, then we can work it together." "Wow, really? Great, thanks," I said, thinking that's not why I'm nervous but trying to keep my cool. "Just let me finish these emails and grab a bite to eat first and I'll enter your grade." I looked up at the posters on the walls. It was all Alaskan wilderness stuff, forests and mountain streams, plus a big poster from the periodic table. "Barium, huh?" I said, looking at the poster, desperate to make conversation. "Yeah, it's my favorite element. Alchemists used to think barium had magic powers to transform living things just because the rocks would glow after absorbing light." "Oh, okay, cool. I feel like such an idiot." She finished her emails and reached into her mini fridge. I was getting desperate to make conversation as I looked in her fridge. "Wow, that's a lot of salmon." "Yeah, I try to eat healthy. You know, salmon, berries, nuts, and sometimes a little honey. All natural foods." Lee was a bear disguised as a human. Realizing that I had seen through the deception, the bear tore off its human costume and began chasing me down the hall. I cried out for help, not realizing it was Saturday and the offices were empty. But I kept crying out as I ran for the fire exit, the bear gaining on me with every step. Just as I pushed the fire doors open, the bear grabbed my leg and I felt shooting pains as it dug its claws into my skin. The fire alarm started going off and the flashing lights momentarily distracted the bear, allowing me to pull my leg free. I limped across the landing but lost my footing as I frantically ran down the steps, tumbling down the lower half as I began to feel excruciating pain from the wound in my leg. The bear seemed to pace at the top of the steps, buying me only a couple precious moments as it found its way to the wheelchair ramp and came barreling down on me just as I reached the main quad. "Help!" I shouted out at no one in particular. The quad seemed desperately empty on a Saturday and my cries just seemed to echo off the building. Just as I felt the bear shove me down and pounce on top, ready to tear my throat open with its powerful jaws, I heard a loud pop, and the massive bear fell down on top of me, fast asleep from a tranquilizer dart. I saw 3 men in game warden uniforms trying to pull the beast off of me as I passed out. When I woke up there were paramedics checking me and one of the wardens came over and put a blanket over my shoulders. Not what you expected when you came to Alaska, huh? This whole semester, it was really a bear just waiting for its chance to kill me. Yeah, they're a lot more clever than most of you down in the lower 48 think. Knew a guy once was married to one for 3 years before it mauled him. So, when you go back home and people ask you which is the worst state, what are you gonna tell them? Oh, Mississippi for sure. Fuck that place. Be positive. Okay. There's this idea of suffering for art, which is terrible but appealing because it seems to hold some truth. Culturally, Mississippi clearly punches above its weight class. The Delta blues have arguably had more influence on 20th century music than any other genre. Should some form of racial reconciliation emerge in the coming years, Mississippi will be one of the places where it will be most felt, and the stories from there will speak volumes about the nature of America. Everyone loves a redemption story, and a story about the redemption of Mississippi is the story of the redemption of America from its original sin of slavery. Maybe that's it? Mississippi is the epitome of the black and white racial mix in the U.S. Before the Civil War, Mississippi was wealthy because slaves were property and did not count as humans. After, racial tensions basically define the state. So when there are racial tensions, the state is at war with itself. And America has had very little time in its history when racial tensions were not high. So here we are, thank God for Mississippi. But we should not forget Reverend King's words about the arc of the moral universe. Reconciliation is coming, and maybe one day when the weight of white supremacy and racism is lightened enough, Mississippi will shine like she properly should. I just wish I could be positive enough to believe that this day will come soon. As someone with the misfortune of currently residing in Louisiana, and not even the redeeming part of the state, it's funny to see the Mississippi replies. Because without the food and New Orleans/Creole culture and vibes we'd literally be Mississippi if not worse. High taxes for citizens but tax breaks for shit business like the oil industry. Past governors gutting education, fucking Gene Dahl. Our current governor isn't terrible and somehow won re-election, but anything he attempts to do that will have a positive effect is denied by damn near any place that's not NOLA. He recently reapplied a mask mandate statewide. Do you think it's working? Fuck no. First morning of the mandate the mayor of my bumfuck town walks into my place of work with no mask, setting the precedent for this hellscape. And they do this knowing it'll garner votes, because the parish I live in had one of, if not the, highest percent votes for Trump, so of course most of the people here don't want to see their mayor wear no goddamn face diaper. Last year when the original mandate hit, our sheriff went on Facebook and said that he and his deputies wouldn't be enforcing it since the numbers don't match up. What has this dumbfuckery got us? Nearly the highest COVID rates in the country. Thanks Florida for beating us on that one. This is why Louisiana's biggest export isn't oil, it's educated young people. Next to no one I know who has talent or brains stays in this god-forsaken state. My big brother lives in Metairie and has it in his head that his work in progressive politics will help the state, and I really commend him on trying, but the state doesn't want to progress. They want to cling to the old traditions of fossil fuel and racism. So congrats to Mississippi on being Louisiana but boring trademark. Our first clue was the first day we moved there, and while we were waiting for the movers to show up with the trucks we decided to get breakfast at a little restaurant down the street from our new house. As I walked in with my 6-year-old daughter I caught a guy eyeballing us, and at first I just sloughed it off as a local not recognizing a new face. We ate and went to pay, and as I was going over the bill he starts talking to my daughter, telling her how pretty she is and how much they love little girls down here. When we got back to the car she told me that he was touching his private parts when he said it. We never ate there again. The early day traffic updates are called the morning road rage, and the locals live up to it every day. Living there was why I now have a CCW license and carry every day. There is almost nothing that doesn't piss someone off, and they will chase you, run you off the road, or try to follow and corner you into a fight. They even have PSAs to call and report shit you experience to the highway patrol. In 2007 a local Little Rock TV news reporter was raped, tortured for hours and slain in a truly gruesome fashion. The attacker snuck in, tied her up and... 4 hours. I can't. If you want to know, go look it up. The coverage details were bad enough, but the facts that it was less than 5 blocks from where we lived was terrifying. After 3 months there we found out living down the block that a local slumlord was moving crackheads into houses he owned so he could bottom out land values and force out neighbors so he could scoop properties real cheap. Then he would flip the properties and sell at premium prices to medical university residents. We later found out he owned the largest realty company in the area and had police working with him to do it. Rats the size of small dogs run the yards and streets at night. At first we thought it was raccoons. Until we caught one in an animal control trap. Fucking things are huge. Makes the NYC pizza rats look like cockroaches. Education system there is absolute garbage, and racism runs all directions regularly. My 6-year-old daughter was regularly attacked and bullied for being mixed, white and Asian, by blacks and whites.